Hello, I am going to provide a brief overview of the Fidelity Companion, which goes with the Orton-Gillingham training you've already had and is a replacement and addition to the blue flip chart. So I'm here on the table of contents, and what I'm going to ask you to pay most attention to that mirrors what you practiced in your training is what's now called OG plus lift. So you see this here for the 3-part drill, for letter formation, and for irregular words or red words. What they have done is maintain those practices that we learned in training, which are the most intensive version, and then they've also done a little bit of scaling back, and I'll show you the differences. So here's cumulative review, 3-part drill, letter formation, or irregular words. These have a little less repetition, a little less multimodal. But for Wayzata purposes, we trained in this in order to intensify our Tier 1 curriculum. So if you stick with this OG plus lift, this is exactly what you were trained in. And then the rest of the flip chart, the Fidelity Companion, will give you some insights into how you might modify or scale back on some things as appropriate. So what I'm going to do is a quick walkthrough here. You will see some new information here that was included in training but is not new to you. It's just new in the flip chart. Things like the gradual release, a correction procedure that I model in training but was not called PIMS before. So it's just that pause and praise, honoring what's partially accurate, then identifying the error, modeling the correction, and providing the opportunity to practice that correction immediately following the feedback. So you'll see notes about gradual release and PIMS throughout this. And those are things we talked about in training, but now they're right here in this Fidelity Companion versus just verbally or in the other materials. So you'll see those again there. I'm going to move past some of these things pretty quickly. Note that there's a phonemic awareness section. You received a phonemic awareness resource and training, but this just has some blending and segmenting routines. It also has some word chaining routines that you could use with your students. Go past that. Now here's the 3-part drill, but I'm going to go forward just to show you. Here is that OG plus lift. This will have the steps, the same amount of repetition, the same amount of multimodal work in the sand or another medium if you choose. And what you'll notice when you go back to just this 3-part drill is the less intensive or less tactile version uses a whiteboard in place of the sand, which is always an option depending on your management and where you are in your practice. Otherwise, the language is the same. You'll see the teacher language here, eyes on me, spell B, repeat, and the students are saying B. B spells B. To get the sound out of their own mouth to their own ear. They're not just listening to the teacher, they're repeating that sound for themselves, as that's what they need to do and think when they write. So there's the 3-part drill. There's the OG plus lift. You'll see the vowel intensive, it is the same. You will see teaching a new concept. One slight shift that I've always recommended is when you're just doing that little bit of practice after formation it used to have a sand tray here, but it was kind of a lot of materials management to quickly get out the sand tray just for that step 5 in the new concept. So now they just have a whiteboard here for new sound dictation. I've always said it could be writing it, with your finger in the carpet. It could be writing it on a whiteboard. It could be writing it in the air. The important thing is that they're getting that practice in a variety of ways, and now it's here in teaching a new concept. Letter formation, this is another one where here is OG plus lift on page 16. This is exactly as you learned it with the screen and green crayon. Now if I go back to page 14, sorry about that, you will see for if you do not have green crayons and screens, there's a similar option with a little bit less repetition, less tactile, but they're same process for handwriting. So OG plus lift is what we trained in, and then there's the scaled back version, scaled back. Then there's the teaching new concept advanced, I'll go by that. There's the steps for the decodable reader. You'll see the word dictation at the top will now say phonics spelling, because that's what it always is, but it's just giving you, both terms there, dictation, spelling. What you will notice throughout the guide is that they will suggest fading the use of visual cues. Now, I model that in training, and I talk about how when you're pounding and tapping the sounds, once they can do it on their own, you want to get out of their way and remove those scaffolds, both verbal and visual. This is fade days 2 and 3, fade the use of visual cues. I would say as you notice they're ready, fades the use of visual cues. That may be different with different concepts, but you will see that gradual release talked about specifically now within the guide rather than just visually and verbally. So within this Fidelity Companion, you'll see notes for differentiation, notes for feedback with that PIMS routine. There's the same thing with the sentence dictation, and it's going to remind you to fade the use of visual cues, which we can do through just writing words on whiteboards and things, because then students don't have those visual cues of the mini lines and the wavy lines, but those serve a purpose while they're needed. Past that, you will see the same thing, red words. I'm going to go beyond to page 28. There is OG Plus Lift. This is exactly what you were trained in. Has the screen and red crayon and lots of repetition. Now, if there are a few select words or times that you don't need that intensive, this is the less intensive version, using a pencil, using a little bit less repetition, but you still go through that process of what's expected and unexpected. Large motor through arm tapping, repetition through writing. There's that OG Plus Lift. You will see some notes on syllable division as well. You'll see the process you were trained in for syllable division with the songs and things that I teach. But then you'll also see something called Fast Track, more for older students as they are learning to recognize prefixes and suffixes, or even younger students with word parts, where as soon as they don't need to go through that process, you can scale back to circling prefixes and suffixes, scooping parts with the child just scooping parts with their finger as well. So it's recognizing the need for those scaffolds to be removed. There's the 3-syllable. And then at the end, you will find some new pieces that go with the asynchronous training that goes along with the OG Plus training that you had for fluency, comprehension, and vocabulary. Just some good best practices, things to think about for both interactive read-alouds as well as their daily reading. So there's the visual cues you're used to. Nothing has changed. That was in the flip chart as well, and it's here on page 41 of the Fidelity Companion. Weekly lesson reminders that apply more when it's full group. Do not hesitate to reach out to either your literacy coach or myself or literacy specialist if you have questions. I provided this overview in case you haven't had time yet to meet with your PLC and coach to talk through these things, but know you have supports if you would like to discuss further. Thank you.